Hi, welcome to the Closet Philosophy podcast. This is Jennine. I'm a personal stylist.
And this is Kristen. I'm a fashion writer, and we're here to uncover the ways that your personal style is so much more than just clothes.
Whether you realize it or not, what you wear touches on science, psychology, culture, politics, and so much more. So this is our first episode, and I am so excited to make a podcast. I've never made a podcast before. So for me, this is, really exciting. But I just wanted to share, since this is the first episode, how we got the idea to make a podcast. And it really starts with an article that Kristen was writing about the influence of women in midlife on the younger generations.
Yeah, it happened, as I remember it, very organically. I was interviewing you because you had started your social media efforts around styling, and I noticed that you were styling all different ages of women. It wasn't specifically older women, it wasn't specifically any particular age. And I thought you'd be a great source for the article. So you had a great example of one woman who it sort of like changed her whole schedule because she used your program. And I was like, oh, that's so great. And then we just, before we knew it, I think we had talked for like an hour and a half, and it wasn't even about the interview anymore. Yeah. And I think I might have said, like, you should do a podcast because this is so interesting. And then I think we started texting, and you were like, oh, it'd be nice to have a partner on it. And I was like, oh my God, that would be so fun. That would be so awesome. So then we just started talking about, what the concept could be. We came up with closet philosophy. And so I guess we should share what we're gonna talk about.
Yeah. I mean, part of the context of the conversation and in your article as well was how we're talking about this era, midlife, this part of a woman's life and how she becomes much more powerful at this stage. We know ourselves better. We come into our own. I personally feel more confident than I've ever felt in my entire life. And yeah, society says that we should be fading into the background. And I just think that that is such an interesting contrast to the lived experience of a lot of women and what's happening at the social level.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we feel like, oh, we will finally have our shit together. Like we are at a certain place in our career. Maybe we have a certain number of years of experience doing what we've been doing. We feel like we have something more to offer than maybe ever before, more confidence than ever before. I feel the same way as you. And yet we're told that we're old and we don't matter. And when you post something on Instagram, there's always some delightful person who's like, dress for your age, or, why don't you like stop trying to act like you're young or something like that. So this concept of creating your own power is something that you're really good at and you've thought about a lot. And and a big part of that is dressing powerfully.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I went through a whole sweatpants phase, just really not dressing up. And I also had a lot of confidence hits. I had been fired from my job. I'd tried this new thing, and then that also failed. And so I had a whole series of one thing after another of things that really took a toll on my confidence. And so, I think it was in 2023, I was on vacation in Portugal with my family, and I was thinking, you know what? I just want to make money. And I Googled profitable business models, and all of the things was clothing reselling. And so I started to get into clothing reselling and going out and sourcing my inventory, right? And I would just not be dressed very fashionably. I'd be just I'm just going to the thrift store. I'm just going to wear jeans and a sweatshirt. And I was felt really isolated. And then I had this idea, you know what? I have all of these really great clothes. Maybe I should wear them. And I started dressing up and putting effort into my appearance. And it was really interesting, how the world shifted once I started to do that. Because once I started to put effort and style my clothes, then people started to walk up to me and ask me questions about fashion. Like younger
Wow.
people of all different ages, they'd ask me like, "Oh, what do you think about this?" And they'd ask me what I was selling for or who I was doing things. They were just like really curious about me. And the only thing that was different was the clothing that I was wearing. So it really kind of brought into mind the power of clothing and how you exist in the world. And I think that, if more people became more conscious of that, that we could really actually make some real serious changes. And I think that a lot of women in this stage of their life, they're starting to feel really invisible, like I was feeling invisible. So maybe one tool like at their disposal that they're maybe not utilizing as much as they could be is style.
Yeah, and then the great thing about your ideas around that is that, or one of the great things is that you focus on thrifted clothing, vintage clothing, and what's already in your closet. So when you work with women, you're in their closet with them, well, virtually, right? But you're helping them style what they already have. So it's not like a spending money situation. It's not like buying things don't need idea.
Mhm.
It's just, figuring out how to put together the stuff that you already have, which I think is awesome because other part of that conversation that I remember from the Forbes interview was that we were talking about how fashion and style, and like we say in our intro, it's so much more than just clothes. It's power, like you just were talking about, and it's also resources and the environment and science and all these things and politics and all these things that people don't necessarily think about when they're getting dressed, but that is going into their clothing. And so that was another reason why we wanted to start a podcast because there are so many facets of fashion that we're really interested in and that we think that other people are hopefully also interested in, that we can have kind of endless material to discuss.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole idea that like style could be life changing. I mean, there is a lot of misogyny in people's attitudes towards personal style. Style is generally thought of something for women, it's about women, and we're just like putting on clothes and it's like all fun and games. But it can actually have life-changing implications. For example, I have a client who started working with me last year, and prior to that, she was asked to give a presentation at a conference, and she was, like, really nervous. She lives in a larger body, and she was like, "Okay," first thing she did, "How to dress for my body type." And there was, like, a
Mm.
lot of information out there to wear dark colors to wear because they were slimming and things along those lines. And she went to give the presentation wearing all black with like a dark gray jacket. And she was like pulling at her clothes. She was like second guessing herself. She didn't feel confident while she was giving the presentation. And it was just like crickets. It didn't go well at all. And
Mm.
then after she started working with me, and I don't do that, like I'm more about embracing your power, giving yourself permission to take up space, wearing the clothes that you like, wearing the clothes and the colors and the things that bring you joy. And this year, when she came to give a presentation at the very same conference, she came wearing a red suit, and she came just after she had to give a presentation just after a group of, like, very, like, young, good-looking, she called them, like, underwear models, like, good-looking men with, like, these flashy presentations, and she was just, there with her red suit and her one slide and no music, and she was, like, really nervous, but sh then she was like, I'm just me, I'm just gonna be here, and I'm just gonna do my best." And she gave a presentation that, people looked up from their phones, they put their phones down, people were coming in from the hallways. They were like really engaged with her. And she got 3 invites to speak at other conferences. Yeah, which is incredible. And then
That's amazing.
a month later, she was actually asked at one of the conferences from the invites from the first conference. She got 10 invites. So this is something that is really powerful, and it just kind of shifts your thinking and your visualization like of yourself, just because you are really giving yourself permission to take up space and be who you are and express that outwardly. So I really want to help people get to understand the mechanics of that. And there's a lot of levels to that, including like psychology and science and things along those lines. There is power in clothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you actually have like a Venn diagram of dressing to create your own power that works with your personality, your where you're coming from. And maybe you want to share that. It's really great.
Okay. All right. So this is the Venn diagram here that I put together because when I started to look into dressing for power on the internet, a lot of what I saw was just wear a blazer, wear a dress, wear this, wear that. And I think that it's very like heavily coded in a lot of ways because power means different things to different people. And a lot of like the generalized idea in mainstream culture about what power is very heavily coded in race and gender and all of those things that we're probably not aware of. And I want to kind of challenge that and help people to embrace their authentic power. So, this is why I came up with this diagram because I think that power means different things to different people and it exists in different ways in different contexts. But here's something that you can use like as a guide to find your own power in your authentic way. The way that it works is that there are three components to dressing for power: quality, memorability, and authenticity. Quality, you need to have good quality clothing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be designer or like natural fibers or it doesn't have to necessarily be those types of things. Quality can exist in lots of different ways. It can exist in the fact that you just like iron your shirt. It could be wearing clothes that fit. It could be even like styling your clothes in a very intentional way. It could mean like a lot of different things depending on what context you're in. But the idea is like wearing clothes in the most high quality way you can is really the key here. The next thing is memorability because a lot of times if you find yourself trying to dress like everybody else, you will be forgettable. Like if you look like everybody else, people won't remember you because you won't be remarkable. And so one of the ways that you can be remarkable is leaning into your authenticity. And this is like the key thing for dressing for power because authenticity is power. Like being yourself in a world that is asking you to conform is an act of resistance. And it's also a power move. So you think about people who go against the grain, people like Serena Williams in tennis, the idea of what you're supposed to wear to a tennis match, especially if you're a woman, was very, very specific. And she broke the mold by wearing her style on the tennis court. She wore cat suits, she wore bold colors. She would do all kinds of things that really challenged people about what it meant to express power in that particular context. And she
Yeah.
did a fantastic job with that.
I remember her getting so much criticism for that. And she was like doing it her way. And I love that she continued to wear those outfits even despite the criticism.
She's become one
Yeah.
of the most iconic women in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in
If
her
not
clothing.
like in the world and for anything almost.
Yeah, and she's become
Yeah.
an iconic person in general as well with
Yeah.
her style. So these are kinds of the things that I want people to start to think about. Like, what does authenticity mean to you? And I get this question a lot. People ask like, "Oh, well, how do you be authentic in a very conservative space?" And
Hmm.
there are lots of ways that you can express your authenticity in your interests, like in places that are very conservative and very regimented and have a lot of rules. And there you can find like little tiny ways to break them. And I think in terms of like wearing certain patterns, wearing certain colors, wearing clothing from different periods of time is another way to do
Hmm.
it. You can mix things in different unique ways. There are lots of ways that you can really create your own specific look that still fall in the parameters of the quote unquote rules, but you're doing it in your own way. So you're not trying to mimic everybody else. You're figuring out what it is that you really like and integrating that into your personal style. And people will recognize you for that. It's something
Yeah.
that I've seen time and time again.
Yeah. That 100% resonates with me. I remember when I was a reporter at Wired and I was covering biotech. And so I had
Mhm.
to go to biotech conference with like a lot of them were male scientists and they were dressed in suits and pretty plain. And so it made me really nervous. I was like, I want to fit in. I want them to take me seriously when I'm asking them questions and stuff.
Mhm.
So I went to J. Crew and I bought a wool matching suit that I thought was like appropriate.
Mhm.
And I thought it was kind of cute, but like I would never have bought a suit if I hadn't felt like I needed to for that purpose.
Mhm.
And I bought a white button down to wear underneath it and
I cannot
wore it.
imagine you wearing that.
Some
Kristen
people
has
wear it.
a very unique 70s inspired style. So, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that was probably even my style back then. This was a long time ago, but I was not comfortable rocking that style in this environment. So I was so uncomfortable, not just because of the way I looked, but also it was like wool. And I know I'm sensitive to wool and I'm itchy, but I was like, it'll be okay with like, it has the pants had lining and I had a shirt underneath, but I still was like so itchy and I just felt sweaty the whole time. And I felt like, no, I felt the opposite of confident, you know?
Mhm.
And just what you were describing, I can imagine like I could have bought a suit, like I could have gotten some type of suit, but not wool,
Mhm.
and maybe cotton, and I could have worn maybe a cool blouse underneath, maybe like with a pussy bow or something to like,
Mhm.
a nod to the 70s, and maybe yeah, I mean
Mhm.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And or I could have done a flare pant with a suit or something like that, and that could have like made me feel authentic,
Mhm.
but not like an imposter, like it's that other
Mhm.
intersection of your Venn diagram. So yeah, it's hard. It's kind of a challenge sometimes to find that sweet spot, but once you find it, it's very liberating,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then you do feel powerful.
Yes, and there's only one real true way that you can find that, and that is through styling yourself. And that is
Yeah.
through experimenting and playing and just trying different things out because you never really know until you actually put it on and you try it. And so and you could really easily do this just by thinking of different unique ways of putting together the clothes that are already in your closet. And this is something that I have seen people been able to do like time and time again. You know, in the beginning, it's like very like kind of forced and awkward feeling, but like as they move through the process of learning how to style themselves, there becomes like this effortlessness to it that is really like inspiring and so cool to see like once you get the hang of like experimenting and playing like how like your outfits kind of reflect that confidence. And so but you can't get to there unless you start with the play and the intentionality to begin with.
Yeah, and that is another thing I love about your method is that you're not going in and styling people. You're teaching them how to learn how to style themselves
Mhm.
for like the rest of their lives. So they're not so much getting this kind of like one-time service. They're like learning a skill,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
I think much more valuable.
Yeah, and it's a different thing. I mean, I think maybe it's a bad business model, but but at the same time, like I do feel like it's more of an investment in yourself because it's like just like learning anything new. It's like learning how to cook. It's learning how to, you know, drive. It's learning how to do basic things that you need in your life. And everybody needs to wear clothes. And particularly like in this day and age where I don't think that personal branding has become even more important than it is today, especially with the rise of like artificial intelligence and automation.
Hmm.
Uh, Humans, we need to figure out different ways that we can differentiate ourselves from like the automation. And part of that is by establishing ourselves as like a personal brand. And I think that the only sustainable way to do that is to discover your authenticity and to really lean into that and explore that and to really understand like yourself like as a human being and the power that you carry.
Wow, that is so that is really important, I think. And that makes me realize that we need to get like an AI scientist on our show. I mean, because where is this going? And like, how can we, like you said, how can we, you know, differentiate ourselves against this massive influx of AI that is coming our way?
Oh yeah, Future Proof: 9 Rules for Humans in the
Oh,
Age of Automation is the book that I'm talking about, and
nice.
he specifically talks about people who have really differentiated themselves in the time of automation. For example, like tax accountants. One of his friends is an accountant, and he is really funny,
Mhm.
and people go to him and they pay more for the experience of having their taxes done by somebody who like makes them feel good instead of
Nice.
going to a piece of software that doesn't make you feel good. So, yeah.
That is interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah. So that is evidence that it's not just creative fields that like need to differentiate themselves, but like all the field, all the everything.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Everything. And so
Yeah.
we can do it, especially, like for writers, for artists, for, because like I don't know why, but they made AI do all of the stuff that we want to do and none of the
Yes.
stuff that we don't want to do. Like I'm still waiting for someone to invent a robot that folds my laundry and puts it away.
Seriously. I mean, where is that robot? Like, we were promised that by the Jetsons and it
Yeah,
never
it never
materialized.
materialized. It
What was that
but
robot's name? It was like Hilda or something
Rosie.
like that. Rosie, that's right. I remember that Hilda.
Like, where's
Yeah,
Rosie? I want
Ruby and
Rosie.
Rosie.
But I would make it be a man. Like,
Actually, yes, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
give him a name like Ronald or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Gary.
But yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah. So I really think that there's a lot to explore, like in this like topic of like finding your power, finding yourself, understanding like your psychology and why you're making the choices that you make and why you have like even like the aesthetics that you feel drawn to like does have a specific psychology behind it. And for example, like I was talking the other day about like quiet luxury and like what does
Mhm.
quiet luxury mean. And there is like some psychology, there's like a lot of times people think of quiet luxury as something that's very aspirational, but there are like political implications of wanting to align yourself with a class of people who have traditionally exploited workers. And so what does that like there that's a big question, right? So it's like, and then also, in this demographic is also very exclusive, this like aspirational demographic that we're all trying to emulate, like this old money aesthetic. It's also very exclusive of, different types of people, different races, different economic classes, and all of that kind of stuff. And the bigger question is like, why is that aspirational for us? Like, why are we doing this? And is this the type of future that we want to create? And so, and that's just like one example, but I don't have any answers. I have a lot of questions. And one of the things
Mhm.
that we're going to do is like, we're going to talk to different people who are experts on these topics and could help us like unpack like what these things mean to us and how we can actually make our aesthetic choices and our sartorial choices with more intention.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, if you, everybody should go look for that post that the quiet, like your quiet luxury post, because people had a lot of opinions on that. Yeah. And I feel like it's like the more times you ask why, like why are we aspiring to that? And why is that? And why you get to the root of it eventually. And sometimes it's like not an answer that you want, but it's like
Mhm.
that, and that's what we want to do is like keep digging into those whys until we find sort of the truth, like till we find like the nut of like why are we doing all these things? Why are we choosing our clothes? Why do we want to dress the way that we do?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
ultimately, I think that we may find things that make us uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
then I think like at the very core of it all, we'll find something that's really beautiful. And
Hmm.
in that, in discovering that thing that's really beautiful, will open the door to more ways that you can actually get to that core. So you may think that there's only one path to get there, but once you discover what that core is, you think like, oh, for example, like for me, like a lot of my drivers are to develop this sense of belonging. Like, I want to be accepted. I want to feel like I belong. I want to feel useful. And all of those like things are at the core that are driving a lot of my behavior, trying to figure out something that gives me purpose and feeling like I'm part of something that's bigger than myself. And once I identified that, I was able to kind of reverse engineer that and think of like there's so many different ways that that could be achieved that I don't have to be driven by what society says I should be doing.
Mhm.
So I think like ultimately, what this podcast is going to do is to help people unpack the different layers and get to the core of who they are and what they want to be, and then they can also do the same and figure out a path that makes them feel good.
I love that. Yeah, because when you think about things like makeup, for example, like why do
Mhm.
we wear makeup? And if you really dig into it, maybe it's like the patriarchy is making us wear makeup, you know? But like you said, there's different paths and we can sort of take makeup back for ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah, and, like, the beauty is that the possibilities are infinite. Like, we're all, like, really smart, and we all can have imaginations, and we're all born creative, and, there is no, like, one way that works for everybody, so yeah, so cool. So, the way that this is gonna work, this is the preview episode.
So be sure to subscribe anywhere that you get your podcasts so you won't miss any of our upcoming episodes.
Oh, I'm so excited. I hope to see you there.